So there's one thing also I want to say is that women that really likes you, that really feel attracted to you, they rarely cheat on you. Really. So the level of loyalty a woman has for you is determined by how much she likes you. That is almost like a formula that I've seen. There are a lot of women that maybe don't like or feel super attracted to the guy, or doesn't feel so much attraction to the guy. That is a red flag. That woman will almost always be able to cheat or be able to go another direction because the fundamental is not there. So in today's world, as we talk, remember when we spoke with Pearl, the podcast we had with Pearl, when I mentioned that a lot of guys approve women instantly. When we as men see attractive women, our neurotransmitters in the brain is just skyrocket that is connected with attraction, sexual attraction, bonding, and love. We just accept them directly based on the visual. Almost everything is accepted. That is how we feel. That is what our brain chemistry are telling us, neuroscientifically. When it comes to women, it doesn't really work that way. Women that see beautiful men, handsome men, men with money, men with status, can be indicators of interest, but the holistic attraction is not there. And how can we actually mimic the attraction level that women feel for us as men, as we feel for women? Well, the only thing I've seen in the science of neuroscience or the science of interpersonal communication is when you are having a conversation with her in depth, only in depth. That is when they have seen that all those attractive neurotransmitters is getting released in her brain, is when she is actually having a real conversation with someone who's actually listen in depth. That is how we can actually mimic those attraction switches, so to speak. But when I asked my mentor, Professor Alexander Lyon, he has a YouTube channel as well. He's a professor in communication at New York State University. He's my main advisor. When I spoke with him, he said that maybe 1 in every 50 person would have some level of listening skills that is proficient to take things into depth. 49 people would not have it. So when we look at men now, looking at women and approving them directly based on their looks, and then we as men cannot communicate attractively. So our level of attraction between men and women is like huge imbalanced. That is why we see these kind of problems massively. What I noticed with real communication skills applied in the field of dating, interpersonal conversational skills, over time, the attractive conversations going to increase the attractiveness level women feel for the man pretty steady. And eventually, they will be matched. And it's not until they are pretty much matched when you're going to see beautiful relationships. But today, of course, probably you have seen as well, is like the relationships today, specifically if the woman is someone who have a lot of male attention, the woman have that much power in the relationship and the man have this one. Because the man just accepts her directly. Holistically, she is super attractive and she have everything that he needs. But he might look quite good, he might be funny in some way, but he didn't create the matching attraction through the conversation in order to match the level of her attractiveness. And that is one of the biggest problems I've seen in the world of, in the history of men, basically. And it is at most today. So I think that if men is going to solve this problem overall in the world, men have to learn how to communicate so they can become more attractive, so we can actually level the playing field between men and women in attractiveness level. What do you guys say about that when you really think about it?
Um, like I find that stat kind of crazy where you say effectively 2% of people can, only 2% of people can listen in depth. I'm a very bad listener naturally. And it was a problem for me when I was younger because I was like, oh, what's the assignment again? Or whatever, and then like I'll get yelled at or something, and then yeah, it just reinforces me in that position to not ask questions. And then it just like spirals out of control, where I listen even less because now I'm afraid to even interact if I'm just going to get yelled at, that kind of thing. That's something I take into parenting, with my daughter. If she's like ever, like if I take the same situation where she asked me to repeat myself, I have therefore learned from my own childhood that I shouldn't give her the same response to discourage her from asking me questions or asking for clarification, for example. Couldn't think of any other examples, but yeah, listening, I'm a very bad listener, naturally. And now that I do these 3 hour panels since last year, I would say it has somewhat improved, but this is probably the only way I have kind of somewhat attempted subconsciously to listen better. Because if I'm going to have 3 hours of panels or interviewing, then I have to listen. So outside of that, I don't think there's anything I have had in my life which has kind of pushed me in the direction of listening better. So I don't think it's something that comes naturally for people who need to improve it. So I kind of wonder like how people can actually improve upon that, because aside from this
So,
panel, I don't think there's any other way I could have listened better over time.
no, so if anyone goes to communication university, like a university, and they go into the cognitive lab at any university, Harvard University, for example, and then they go to like, okay, I'm going to learn to listen. Okay, but it's just not listening. You need to know what you're going to listen to. So I'm going to give, like, this is part of what I'm actually teach as well. So one of the keys, and this is free stuff now I'm going to give on your channel, is that when every of you guys that are looking now in this video, this podcast, if anyone says something, they always leave cues in a sentence. Always leave cues. So many of those cues could also be adjectives like good, excited, tired, or whatever. Those adjectives, specifically those adjective cues, always need a clarification question because we don't really know what that actually means. So in order to actually being able to carry on with the conversation, for example, if you're going to ask someone a question, let's say I'm going to ask you, what do you think of New York? And then you're going to tell me what you think about New York
Oh
in one
no.
sentence.
Oh no. No, I'll give you a fucking rant about New York. Fuck New York. Fuck no, I have a love-hate relationship with New York. It's like it's one of those things where if you're in New York, you're like half the time you're like, fuck this, everything's so far away if you're staying in outside of Manhattan, for example. Or like it's so annoying to get around. I wish it was more efficient, like Tokyo or London, let's say, because the geography is so arbitrary. It's like here's an island which is good strategically for the Dutch to land up to colonize, and here's Long Island, and then there's Staten Island. Staten Island makes more sense for New Jersey. Why the fuck is it associated with New York? And there's one bridge from Staten Island to Brooklyn. But then where's the bridge to Manhattan? Like the city just makes no sense in the layout. I'm fucking ranting now, but when you leave New York, when you leave a big city, because I'm from buttfuck middle of nowhere where it's just fucking trees, old people, and nothing much else. And that basically
People
summarizes
having
most
bum
of it.
sex as well.
Occasionally, uh, only on Tuesdays.
Only on a
So
very special day.
if we just pause here. So I will not ask any follow-up question here, but what you said there now is like what you mentioned in that sentence was like New York is a mess. You mentioned Tokyo. You would like it to be like Tokyo. You would like the public transport system to be better. And then now you actually living in the middle of nowhere with lots of, trees and basically forest. You see, suddenly I have actually maybe 3 to 4 cues to start talking about. So instead of going on and start talking about other things, let's just take things a little bit more into depth. So,
I'm
for
in the
example, where you
business of
are now,
information.
you are like in the middle of nowhere with these just trees. I'm curious. Now I can ask a close-ended question by saying, "Do you like it, or do you like it, or do you hate it?" What would you say?
So, just to twist this a little bit, where I am right now, I'm in a desert, so there are no fucking trees. But where I'm from, a fuckload of trees. So it's a contrast. But in general, it's like what I'm saying is, when you're from the middle of nowhere, and then because I traveled a lot up to this point. My daughter is 4 years old, and she has been to 4 continents. But essentially, being from a small place and then moving to a much bigger place for opportunity reasons, for financial reasons, and so on, well, career reasons. Um, Once you're in the big city, it's like, fuck, there's a lot to do. I gotta walk fast, and everything becomes much faster. And then once you're back in the little place, things are slower, and it's like you have ADHD or something. Like, oh, I want to do something, but there's nothing to fucking do here. And that kind of mindset kicks in. It's like, oh, I'm a New Yorker now. What the fuck is happening to me? Because I picked up like the London mindset, the New York mindset, having spent time in those places. And now that I'm in Lima, and this is my third time living here, um, I somewhat have a Lima mindset, although there are still parts that I don't understand. Like you see me walking the street, I'm walking quickly because London and New York taught me that. So yeah, anyway, it's like once you leave a big city, you get to appreciate some things. Like now I can actually see the stars. I had spent years in the big city, and I haven't seen the stars for fucking years, and now it's fucking beautiful. Something that I didn't really appreciate when I was younger because it's just there, whatever. And then once you're the other side of the coin is because there's less stuff to do, um, it can become a little bit of a drag and a bit boring and a bit isolated, but I don't know. Something along those lines.
Yeah, okay. So basically now I mean, not so many people are that expressive as you are. So most people will just, answer with 2, 3 words, and then they will be quiet. And then you just take one of these 3 words and then, oh, can you help me to understand that better? Or I would like to know more what you meant with that particular thing. So for example, like when you said not like Tokyo, okay, help me to understand that better. What did you mean with not like Tokyo?
Then I would just like go on a rant about how Tokyo is so fucking great,
Yes,
basically.
exactly. And then I going on and listening to
I
more
got a lot
cues,
of stuff to say about
to
Tokyo.
really understand,
I
your
fucking love
perspective, where you're
Tokyo.
coming from.
So good.
No, so
Let's
so
go back.
basically, so the value here for everyone who's actually listening is that if you want to practice listening skills, start with listen to the sentence anyone are saying, because in that sentence there will always be something to ask about. There will always be something to explore. Don't force yourself to stay. Don't move into other topics. Listen exactly to what word was said in that sentence. Take that and explore further down. Many times to explore, a specific word, for example, like I'm excited, I think it's good, I think it's beautiful. Let's say we use beautiful. Take that word and say and ask them, by the way, when you say beautiful, what do you actually mean? Or you mentioned good. Can you help me to understand that better? and so on. That is how you start taking things to depth. Most guys just continue to talk on the surface level area and just continue to rampage. They never go into depth, and they become boring, and it doesn't go to influence anywhere. As long as you start asking about those cues, that is when people actually start think. And while they start thinking, something happening in their brain, and when they're expressing, neurotransmitters are getting released, because now we're talking in a different conscious level. So that kind of neurotransmitter release is what you want with women, because that is what creates attraction. Emotional connection and relationship building is something that is real, that has been studying for so long time by by all the universities, and we should actually stick with what we know. So that is also something I want to emphasize: stick with the academic stuff made into pure practice.
Yeah, no, I actually I agree with that. And what is interesting is usually guys who have a lot more social anxiety when they get started, they're like constantly thinking what the next question is that they want to ask, and then they don't tend to listen to what the women are saying because they're like, oh, I need to build attraction. Let me ask this next question. You know, they're not thinking about exploring something that she said, even if they say like, "Oh, where are you from?" and she says, "Oh, I'm from Spain," and they don't think about asking like, "Oh, well, what brought you here? You know, what sort of things do you enjoy, or can you tell me a bit more about Spain? I've never been before, or something, or what are Spanish people like?" The fact that they don't tend to explore that, and instead they're thinking like, "Okay, right, I've asked her about where she's from. I wonder now if I can start asking her for her phone number, or what is her job? What does she do?" And instead they probably fall into more of an interview kind of mode. Just literally they've got like a prep of questions ready in their mind. They don't care about what the answers are, but they believe, maybe, I don't know if it's something maybe like coaches have taught to them, but certainly for them it might be just something that they believe that if they say this list of questions, then they've built attraction and they'll get a phone number. And of course, it doesn't quite work like that. So yeah,
Absolutely not.
100%. Yeah, if they're not going that bit deeper, which maybe once guys do find a little bit more confidence or they feel a bit more grounded in their interactions, then definitely, I think that's usually the moment guys do tend to start exploring a bit more, because they do kind of gain that curiosity of like, "Oh, well, I've never met a Spanish person before. Oh, tell me more about it." Then suddenly they do go that bit deeper. It might not be much deeper, but at least they are trying to create some kind of bond or connection with a person they're speaking to, because they're just showing interest in them.
They
Um,
are absolutely, they are empathetic tools that is very effective to really enhance the understanding between
mm,
the guy and the girl. So, for example, like if I would ask you, what do you think about, you from London, right?
I have indeed, yeah.
Yeah. So, what do you think of London, living there?
Well, it's certainly a very interesting place. I don't
Fuck
think we.
London.
Yeah, well, you can say that. I can't say that because I'm from London. We're not allowed to hate our own city, um, but no, it's an interesting place. Most people are moody. They don't like having conversations. Everyone's stressed. Um, the weather's always crap, and people's emotions tend to be connected to the weather. That when the weather's good, everyone's really happy and content and wants to socialize, and when the weather's miserable, then like all hell might as well break out on Earth.
Okay, I see. But I'm curious, when you said London is interesting, I'm curious, can you help me to understand that interesting more?
Sure,
Have
yeah,
you
I'd say
been?
the people, the culture. There's so much to see. I mean, I think Londoners don't tend to appreciate it enough compared to what maybe people who aren't from London get to experience. I think it's one of those like grass is greener moments. Like you don't really appreciate it because you're just in the surroundings all the time. But once you tend to leave it and then you come back to it, I think then you find that passion for it again.
But when you said it's a lot to see, what comes to your mind exactly?
Oh, the landmarks. There's a ridiculous amount of landmarks and history attached to the city. So
Okay, that
there's
is
enough to
how.
keep anyone busy.
Yeah, I mean, when I'm thinking about London, I mean, that's like the center of Europe, basically. It's like the capital country of Europe, and with the historical history, I mean, it's just mind blowing. It's just mind blowing. So, if I understand you correctly, actually, interesting and London means basically the culture and the landmarks. That is like one of the two heaviest thing that you like about London. Is that correct?
I would say, yeah, it's definitely up there. Besides the food as well.
And the food as well. When you say food, what do you think about exactly? What is the
What
first
do
thing that
I
comes to mind
what do I think about food? I think
in
about
Trying
London?
so hard to
a lot
hold
about
back. I
food.
got so many comments.
No, but so
Uh,
so so you get so you get my point. What I did was like I just take what you said, and I want to. I'm
yeah, and
genuinely curious
you
about what you say,
extrapolate it and expand it. Yeah.
and then I'm going to make sure that I understand what you actually meant. I want to
Mm.
understand what you think of London. You think London is interesting, but what does that mean exactly? Okay, so two things. Now I know three things, four things. Okay, so the culture, the landmarks, lot to see. A lot to see means landmarks, the historical, places and monuments, and people. Even though they are very moody, depending on the weather, they are still great people. That is the impression I got from you. Am I correct
Yeah,
here?
depending on the day that you go into London, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say that.
Yeah. So
Only only
All
on
the time of the
Tuesdays.
year.
Only
and
on
then I creating
Tuesdays during the
this
summer.
but then I creating this, like bonding is like, okay, fine. You know what? I'm going to make this conversation about you.
Mm.
You. I'm
Yeah,
not. I'm
and
not going to
you get
like
on the
talk about
same
me so much.
wavelength as me as well by at least being that bit curious about what because I've certainly noticed when people do try and say things or explain things, they don't always go into enough depth with it. It can be very surface level because they don't know if they were meant to go in depth with an answer, which is why then it's great to be able to flush out more from someone and say, "Oh, can you tell me more about it?" Or like, "Oh, what do you mean by that? Can you explain this more?" So yeah, of course, then it just opens it up and it gives you even more. We call it ammunition topics, or topics of ammunition. That as soon as someone gives you a few of those like things that you can explore and say, "Oh, tell me more about this or that," then yeah, it gives you that ammunition of things that you can go, "Oh, well, I can now pick and choose my topics rather than standing here going like, what am I going to say to her next?" Um, and then you can explore the topic that you kind of resonate with the most, because certainly there'll be topics that you might then go like, I don't know anything about, and then you ask me about it, and then in fact actually what can build a connection is by even openly saying like, you know what, I don't know much about London, can you tell me more about it? And that actually also gives someone the opportunity to open up and share their knowledge and experience, and even then probably even throw in like a story or two as well, because that's usually where like the best opportunities and rapport can be built.
Absolutely. And specifically, if you can tailor the questions that you want to know what she think of London from the perspective of her relationship to London. You see,
Mm.
so it's like, I'm curious. What would you say is like the best thing with London? If you would have to say one thing, you just start with that thing. She starts thinking, the people, maybe she says, the people. Okay. When I'm thinking about London, I'm thinking like a global place with people all over the place, all over the world. I'm curious, when you say people, I want to know more. Tell me more about it. Now, what happens is that she has to suddenly go into this conscious mode to really think about what am I thinking here exactly. She starts thinking, and then she expresses herself. That is liquid gold, because that is when she feel at best in conversations. She expressed that to you. She will laugh a little bit about what she thinks. She's a little bit unsure how you will react, and you really, really listen to what she says. And then, let's say she said a bunch of stuff, and then you just go into the twist of, summarizing or paraphrasing. Let's say summarizing. I'm saying that, okay, so if I understand you correctly, you said first that you like London, but what you actually like is this, and this. Am I following you here? Whatever comes out from her mouth, if she say yes, then you made a hit, you made a home run. If she say no, not exactly, then you just tell her, correct me. She will correct me, and then you will know. And what happens after that? Now you go into the area of reciprocity in attraction. There's a psychological statement, a psychological way of doing things. Reciprocity in attraction is when you start admitting things like, you know what? I really like you. The way you see London, which also in some way is how you see the world, is something that I feel attracted to. You are really attractive. Now, what happens now is that you're showing her that you're liking her for real. And what happens in the theory of reciprocity is, what happens is that her brain is more or less wired to like it back. You see? So we tend to like people that like us. It becomes like that. And we can achieve that reciprocity in attraction when we go into that depth and telling her that we like her based on context. When we look at women, we got those neurotransmitters released in the brain anyway, so we like her directly, but women don't, you see? So if you see a woman that is really attractive and she shows somewhat of interest towards you, you will just fall for it. As a man, you're just like, oh my God, I'm in love with her, basically. Just the smallest interest that triggers men directly, specifically if she's that attractive. But if we're doing something back, just by looking at her and smiling or something like that, doesn't give that impact. We don't obtain we tend to like people that like us. She can do it, but we can't do it. We have to do it in conversation, in depth, and then admit, and then she will realize that that guy actually likes me. And you know what? I like him back. So that is like the whole concept of emotional connection and relationship building, taken from the academic science made into pure practice in the dating scene. This part here is not only for dating. This is for negotiation. This is for psychotherapy and all other professional
What was
fields.
that? I don't know if you saw it. There was like a thumbs up thing that like appeared.
Yeah. I know. Sometimes Zoom has this one. I don't know.
Oh,
But you get my
sorry,
point, right?
I'd never seen that before. No, sorry, no, yeah.
No. Sometimes it's actually, I don't know why Zoom is doing that, but it does sometimes. But all in all, you get my point. Yeah, it's
yeah.
That's what I believe is the key. Men have to learn this, really. And one thing that I'm a little bit allergic about is like self-claim theories. Like, yeah, this works for me, so it should work for other people. Well, being able to have conversations and actually influence women is based more than a mere thought or your own personal experience. This is something that has to go into the scientific research arena in order to actually see what actually happens when we're having conversations, so we can give tangible advices to people who want to learn this. Okay, a shout out to Marcus that used to be on this channel, for example. I think that Marcus, I don't know if you know who that is, but he been on this channel for quite some time, and he has sometimes hard to express what actually works, but I can see what works. He's a great listener. He's really listen and calibrating on what she says and then act thereafter. And that is something that you cannot really teach other people, because that is what you are good at. But if you don't know how to teach people how to listen, you cannot use your own way of doing things, because you don't really know what you're doing. If you're a good listener without training, you don't know that you're a good listener. You just are. And then you're doing some things that works wonderful for you. And then you try to teach other guys the same thing, but it doesn't work for them because the other guys can't listen in the same way. You see, so a lot of missing pieces exist in those methods. I think we need to build a solid foundation. Anyway, what do you think?
So what do you think about what's your favorite thing about London? Well, it has like 5 airports, so it's easy to leave. But anyway,
You mean
just
escape?
the fact.
I think you
Exactly.
mean escape. It's not
Yeah,
leave. It's escape
but
it.
it's easy to leave. That means that you don't like London, and it's easy to leave. Can also be connected. The airport can be your relationship to airport is that you are probably traveling. Then you either want to travel or you have to travel.
The fact
So
that
I will
I
just pivot on
wanted
that.
to answer this question when
Yeah.
I'm not the one who was asked it is a testament to the fact that this process of listening and asking the right kind of questions is intriguing enough for people to really want to answer it. When you were talking there about what you think of this and that,
Yeah.
I was holding back so many fucking comments because I had so much to say, whereas normally I wouldn't have so much to say. So that's just something that's an observation I wanted to put out there. But anyway, I got to wrap this up. Any final comments on this?
Oh, I agree with everything of that, and that it is uh, it's a fundamental skill that everyone should be adopting. Just simple conversation skills. It's not a select few that only learn it. I mean, it's everyone who can learn it. It's just if people are willing to learn to actively listen and remove whatever sort of social conditioning that they've got that is telling them like, oh no, I shouldn't ask these particular questions, or I shouldn't go that bit deeper with investigating stuff with someone. I think the best seducers and the best coaches that I know, or guys who get results, are the ones who um, genuinely just show interest in another person. They actively listen. They also share their own personal information. I don't know if you've heard of something called open loops, creating open loops in conversations. That's something that I personally love doing. Um, so
What
I
is that
even
exactly? I heard it before, but I don't exactly know what it
Oh, well,
means.
I'll tell you about it later. I'll tell you about it
All
later.
right.
No, that's being just tongue in cheek. So the point with an open loop is that you are creating genuine curiosity in a topic, and then you don't answer it. You actually answer it later on. So you're getting someone then to hold on to this question or this curiosity that they had about this topic, and then it means later on you can go back to talking about it. So where we were talking about London, you were asking me about with London, and then maybe like with the food and the landmarks and stuff. Then I might tease a little bit about with food, but then change the topic to something completely different. But you're still genuinely curious of knowing about my favorite things to eat in London, because maybe you're going to come to London, maybe you want to go to some of like really cool restaurants in London, and you're wondering where I might
I see.
suggest. So
You're
that
hiding in
thought,
the curiosity, essentially, I
yeah.
guess.
So you're kind of holding on to it, and the beautiful thing is you can actually do that with a few topics at a time. It's not a just, all right, I've now got, she's holding on to a topic, right? I'll hold it for a bit. But you can do that with all sorts of things, and even with like seduction, you can do that as well. You might, it's where like a coach might say something like, "Oh, I'll tell you about it later." If you're being a good girl, I might tell you about it later. And then she's going like, "Oh, I want to know the answer to this." So there's certainly different levels to having conversations and certainly building seduction, but wholeheartedly, I agree. Like everyone should, at the very least, just learn to be curious um, of the person that you're speaking to, and ask questions. Be genuinely interested in finding out something. And an exercise even that I really like doing, even not just for myself, but even when I work with guys, is to say to them, like, when you're going out to approach, and this is great really for beginners, but when you're going out to approach, you're not allowed to ask for the phone number until you found out three interesting things about the girl. Just ask her three interesting things that pretty much justifies you wanting to ask her out. And then if you're unsure how to ask for the number, you can even say at the end as like a summary of those things, because it's also great for you to learn to actively listen and remember what she's mentioned. Then you can end up saying to her, like, you know what? I think you're really cool. I like the fact that you're into London. I like the fact that you're really into eating food and that you know all these cool places to go and hang out. You know what? I got to take you out on a date sometime. What's your number? it's just
Yeah, absolutely. I love that part because you mentioned James Tusk. I worked with James Tusk before. I was his main conversational coach for some
oh,
time.
nice. Okay,
Yeah,
nice.
I was also in his, a couple of infields in his before his channel got, banned.
Oh,
So
removed.
so yeah, so James Tusk was, all into this idea of empathetic conversations that I provided for him then. So through him, I had a lot of both on Zoom and group coaching and also live coaching, teaching guys real conversational skills. And those were not
Nice.
the London day game, Tom Terrero style routine-based stack routines. No, this was actually real academic stuff made into practice, and that just made wonders for basically everyone. But what I want to say is, yeah, what I want to say is like this is not something that you're going to get good at just by reading, like reading about it, knowing it theoretically. You have to practice it. So it's more of a practice exercise than a theoretical exercise. Actually, people don't understand that. So two things. One thing is you need to create a habit of listening. Once what happens when you are having a habit of listening is that all the cues is coming to your ears without thinking. Now the cognitive flexibility comes in where you ask questions about the things that you hear automatically. Oh, by the way, when you say that and that, what do you think about exactly? Oh, by the way, you mentioned this. I'm curious. What made you think that way? How can you think that way? Or whatever you come across. But you need to be able to listen to all the cues in the first, and you need to practice to have a habit of listening to cues first. Once you have that, then things are going to be much easier, and now you can really fulfill your mastery of conversations. Really, it's all about the listening skills first. It's like the big hurdle to come across, and then yeah.
All right.
You mentioned many times active listening. This is actually something that we use in academia a lot. Active listening. It's like a way of listening. Some people say empathetic listening. Some people say reflective listening. You say active listening. I'm just curious where you got that word from.
Well, active listening. I think it's just a London thing, just how
Yeah.
we say it. I think yeah, I mean, I've been in the dating industry for so long now. I know. I think you just, and I spend also a lot of time around like psychologists and hypnotherapists and stuff.
Mhm.
So there tends to be a bit of an osmosis of just picking up language off of people, and sometimes that language or the words kind of evolves into something new over the years, but everyone still knows what you mean when you say a certain word. But yeah, I think for me, active listening, like when I say to someone or explain active listening, yeah, they pretty much understand inherently what I'm talking about. Even with me being from Essex, usually people kind of get it.
All right.